but I want to get out there and I want to help people to be able to do what I've done. Collaboration now is king in this industry, in
Yeah.
any business nowadays, and you can collaborate around the world. And so that's the first step, is just identifying who you are and where your skills lie.
Brian Livingston, a former police officer, is the founder of My Mentoring Guru. Over the past 20 years, he has helped hundreds of people build businesses with a combined net worth exceeding $100 million. Now he focuses on assisting first responders seeking career changes, helping them start fresh and achieve a happy, financially secure future through his various programs. Brian, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on, Brad.
Excellent. So for those who haven't discovered your work yet, perhaps you could share a little bit about who you are, where you are, and what you do.
Well, I guess who I am, I'm Brian Livingston. I'm a former police officer. We'll get into that in a bit. I live in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and I have a few different businesses. But, we're going to dive into the deep end really quick, which we can. The reason why I do what today is you've got to go back 23 years ago to where I was. And I was a police officer who, without going into great detail, I hit that PTSD wall. Okay. I remember laying in bed, looking up at the ceiling, and I can still draw the water stain from our ceiling 23 years later. I know the exact outline, and I could still stencil it in. And I'd alternate between staring up at that water stain and rolling over and looking at the red light on the alarm clock, ticking down the minutes until I had to go back to work. And I was just absolutely dreading it. And to the point that I had two options in my life, and neither of them were good options.
This episode is brought to you by Start With Values. If you'd like to reduce stress and increase fulfillment in your work and life, then check out startwithvalues.com. There, you'll be able to download the Values app, which helps you to discover your core values and bring them to life through micro habits. There is a values course so that you can learn about the science and practice of core values, and you'll be able to pre-register for my forthcoming book called Start With Values. I hope that these tools will enable you to achieve more fulfillment and make more meaningful decisions on your journey of life. Now back to the episode.
One was that I was going to keep on policing, keep the salary, knowing that I was going to eventually take my own life. That was inevitable thing to me in that conclusion. The second option was for me to walk away from policing completely, having to move into entrepreneurship. And I say I moved in involuntarily because I had to, and stay and be alive for my wife and my two young daughters who were 3 and not even 1 at the time when all of this was going on. And so I chose option 2, obviously, because I'm still here today. But that has really driven me through what I've had to do in terms of my entrepreneurial journey to get where I am now.
Amazing, amazing. And what was it about being a police officer that led you to that point? I mean, of course, we hear a lot about the challenges and the lack of support. But for you, what was it that really didn't support you on your journey?
Well, there was a couple things. Obviously, there's a lot of little things. But when I first started policing, my dad said, when you get to the department, because first of all, you had to go through police college, right? Once you get to the department, you pick 2 people that have it all together. Okay, and so I chose my 2. And the first one continued to move up the ranks, and he eventually became chief of police. Okay, phenomenal guy, like a water off a duck's back kind of guy. Nothing could faze him, right? And the second guy that I chose, I loved the way that he policed. He was not he was stern, but he was fair, and he didn't intercede when police didn't need to intercede. Um, Sometimes I see police get involved in things and they exacerbate the problem. And he was not that guy. He knew how to diffuse situations appropriately. And I love that about him. Well, 1 year into my career, and him and I, we had lockers across from each other. And while I was away on holidays, fortunately, the day of, he took his own life in the locker room right in between where our two lockers were. So every day that I could come into work after that, there was a cutout piece of carpet where they'd cut out, because that's where all the blood was. They didn't even replace everything, just cut out a piece. But there it was, just this constant reminder of this guy that I thought, who had it all together, had decided that it was better off to no longer be alive than continue on in the life that I thought was so amazing to me.
It's so sad when you hear stories like that person just felt there was no other way, that the pressure of the situation just led to such a dark path. Is this quite common in the police and first response world?
Yes, very, very much so. I don't know the stats. I know guys that can rattle them off the top of their head, but no, it is not an uncommon thing. Obviously, it's not common, but I'm in chat groups which are just first responders, even other chat rooms where we're just police, and somebody will literally drop in a memorial where another police officer took his own life, not killed in the line of duty, but just saw it as his or her only way out of what they were dealing with.
So tell me about the pivot. You put yourself in that position, and it's so uncomfortable, and you've got a young family. What were those first steps, and how did you decide what it was that you would do?
Well, the interesting part was when this was in 2001, okay? And this is really when day trading really hit the forefront, okay? So I was actually, because I was a math major in university, and I literally went out and got the book, Stock Market for Dummies, right? That was my first book for the market. I taught myself all about it. I taught myself how to day trade. And I flew into New York, I'm not kidding, on September 9th, 2001. And as we're flying in, this guy beside me hits me because he knew I'd never been to New York before. And he hits me and he goes, "Hey, there's the two towers." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And 2 days later, they were gone. Okay. And just like that, my job was gone. Okay. So everything that I was planning on just evaporated that day. I stuck around there for 3 weeks trying to get something ironed out, but everything drastically changed after that. Okay. And so they were just like, no, they literally offered me a job where I could work for them for free. That was the only job offer they could offer me. And so I said, no, I can't. So I had to come back home from New York, knowing that I'm about to have to go back to policing, and I now have no job. Everything that I'd worked for was gone, and I have to go back to work 2 days later. Yeah, no, and so what ended up happening was I put back on my uniform. I went back, and the chief literally waited till I got back to work because I'd been off on mental leave, right? And I was using that to try and better myself so I could get out of the situation. And he waited till I got back, and then he ordered a independent 3-doctor review of my mental health. He could have done this at any point prior, but he waited until I had to come in. I had to face every single police officer, knowing that every single person knew that I admitted that mentally I couldn't hack the job. And it was embarrassing. It was ridiculing. And I had to go up to our first shift meeting. And then I got pulled out of the shift meeting and told, no, you're not allowed back on active duty. We've got to check and make sure you're not crazy. So I took off my uniform, went home. I walk in the door, and my 3-year-old says to me, Daddy, I don't want you to be a policeman anymore. And to me, police are the ones that the young children should be looking to for safety, for help, for guidance, right? And my daughter's saying, I don't want you doing that anymore. So I kid you not, I sat down right there. We lived in a small place, and my computer was right in the living room beside the couch. And I sat in my chair and I typed out my resignation. Didn't even give 2 weeks. Just walked. And I literally drove back to the station and said, "Here you go," and I walked away.
Incredible. And then, how did you decide what you were going to do next?
Well, I ended up doing a couple things. Like I picked up some employment, made some money, and whatever. It ended up that the company that out of New York, they were going to actually sign a contract with these people in Canada, because that's where I'm from. And so I reached out to them directly. And I said, hey, you know what? This thing didn't work out, but I'm still available. So they said, oh, well, we'll take you. Come out to Vancouver. So we literally, in the span of 2 days, packed our whole house, moved out to Vancouver. And, I came in, I made a huge difference to their business. In 3 months, I helped add 94% to their bottom line in 3 months. And I was teaching traders how to trade. Okay. And then I find out after all of this has happened that they're actually in financial difficulty. And they can literally, my best option was I just said, please lay me off so I can collect unemployment until I figure out what's going to happen next. So literally doubling their revenue in 3 months wasn't even good enough to dig them out of the hole that they were in. And I specifically asked them before I drove out, how strong is your business? And it was like, yep, super awesome, we're on fire, blah, blah, blah. And it just wasn't true. I moved out there, and a week later, one of the owners left, moved to the United States, left it in the hands of the other guy right after I got there. And so we're screwed at this point. We're on UI. We can't afford anything. Vancouver's a very expensive city to live in. So we had to move home and move back. And I kid you not, we took our queen size mattress, slapped it on the floor of my father-in-law's unfinished basement in the corner. And that's where me, my wife, and our 2 young daughters slept. And our 2 dogs that we had. Everybody was just in that one little corner, and we had to rebuild from scratch again. So it's like we've now made multiple attempts, and everything is failing. And I look back now and I go, man, wouldn't it have been marvelous if I had a mentor? Like, that would have made such a difference in my life if I knew someone who would have been able to help me. But everyone that I knew, was a salaried employee. Everyone. Like my dad was, you go to school, you get a degree, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you retire, you get your pension, and then you die. That was the plan, right? That's the way life is supposed to work. And so I knew no one entrepreneurial could help me. So I was just making mistake after mistake. And what ended up happening, we were out for a drive one day just to get the kids out of the house. We had to pay my wife's stepmother $50 to borrow her van for the day. She wouldn't even lend it to us. We have to give her $50 just so we could go for a drive with the kids. And we drove by the sign, and it said, basically, do you have a traffic ticket? We can help you fight it. And I was like, that's a thing? Like, I had absolutely no clue. Okay. And I was like, wow, these guys must be super qualified. But I was like, what the heck? I had some traffic qualifications. I taught
Yeah.
accident investigation and traffic law at the police college. I was a traffic officer before I left. I was, had all these qualifications, but I'm like, man, if these guys are going to court, these guys have got to be the cream on the top, right? And so I called, and the next day I was hired. Like literally that quick. And what turns out, as I later got to know everyone in the industry, there was only one person in the entire industry in the province that had credentials comparable to mine. Okay. And so now all of a sudden I'm like, well, I knew how to be in court because I testified all the time. I'd even prosecuted because we had to prosecute our own bylaw offenses. So now all of a sudden I'm just on the defense side and I'm defending people. And the business just grew. It grew and grew and grew. This guy came in and he said, I want you to increase the business by 100% in 18 months. I had to buy an option every so often, every month, a certain amount, depending upon how much was made, went towards the buyout. And month one, I gave him a 107% increase over his best ever month. Okay. And then month two was even bigger than that. And so I went back to him and I said, I want to buy this business out early. I don't want this month by month payout. And so what happened was he thought he had suckered me into a deal, right? And then all of a sudden he's like, holy crow, this thing's a cash cow now. So he's like, no. He goes, I'm not willing to do that anymore. And I'm like, so it took me 4 years to work off where this guy literally did nothing except supply a phone number and handled at that time, the Yellow Pages marketing, right? The Yellow Pages book that was super thick back then. And that's all he handled. When I went to him to talk to him about internet marketing, he's like, the internet's stupid. You can't make money on the internet. We're not doing that. Like, that's how, like, just, he's like, if you ever think you've got a business idea, don't, because I've already thought of everything. You just go and he's like, basically, you're a monkey. Here's a banana. Go do the thing. So eventually I took it over and life was great. Everything was going well. And there ended up being a clause in the contract that myself and my lawyer missed. And he came in and took the business out from under us.
Oh.
Okay. And so literally I lost everything. The funny part was shortly after that, he was trying to sell off the business and he was trying to make all the money from it. And nobody bought it from him because he wasn't the asset. Right.
Yeah,
and everybody in the industry knew. And now I've got a 5-year non-compete.
Okay. No.
And
5 years.
And so nobody could even be like, hey, Brian, come work for us. Because I'm like, I now I can't afford. I'm like, you have to handle. If he sues, you've got to pay it. I'm like, you've got to get the lawyer. You've got to fight it because I cannot afford this. And because all of a sudden my income went to zero. And nobody was willing to do that. So luckily, I picked up another job. I still had people calling me all the time about their traffic tickets, and I was trying to guide them to help or refer them over to a guy that I knew in the industry or that type of thing. And so, it just goes on. I ended up getting involved with a friend through my kids swimming who had created this unbelievable stock market software that relative strength ranked all the stocks, like in Canada, in the US, from top to bottom. Here's where you invest. Here's where you don't. And I was like, this thing is absolutely insane. Okay. We did some stuff with it. And I kid you not, he had 2 salesmen who couldn't sell anything, himself, and an off-site programmer. And right before I came, one guy quit. I came in for the first day for sales, realized that the other salesman was doing absolutely nothing, and he quit the next day. And so now all of a sudden I'm in charge of sales And I've been there one day. And
Oh my
we
goodness.
blew this thing up that it is now the biggest of its kind in Canada. Okay. They manage billions in assets. They have contracts with banks. They have their own white label investment products. We just blew it up. Okay. And then I got bought up. It was a good time for me, but still, now all of a sudden I'm back to square zero again. Okay. And so then some things happened to our family. I don't want to get into it. But eventually it led me back to going back into the traffic ticket business. Okay. And yet again, I still have no business mentor because the business mentor that I was working with, who I helped blow everything up, he developed a grandiose lifestyle and he knew everything and I knew nothing type attitude. Right. And so that's when I tapped out and I just bought out. I said, you know what? I know you guys are going to be super successful. I know it's set up, but I can't do this. And it's funny because I just last week talked to another guy who just quit last year. So this was like 8 years ago. And he's like, why did I take 7 more years to not take the hint from you leaving? He's like, oh my gosh, he didn't change. He got worse, is what he told me. So anyways, we had some family things happen. And so now my brother-in-law says, come up to where we live. I've never been there before. We'd been there for Christmas for a couple days. I said, come up, move up here, and we'll get you a job with being a salesman at a car dealership. I know a guy. So anyways, I get this job promised to me. I get up there, and then they're like, no, it's okay. So I've got nothing again. And instead of the unfinished basement, I am in a bedroom, at least. It's got carpet this time. Okay. And we've got our mattress on the floor and in their basement in this room. And they gave my kids a separate bed. So my kids are now, I'm just trying to think, I think 17 and 14 at this point. And they're sleeping together in a double bed. Okay. Just side by side, like it was like that wide. And they're sleeping together. That's all we've got. And my wife and I are on the bed, and we've got our dog still. Then I was like, you know what? I'm going to start up the traffic ticket business again. I am outside of any non-compete. Turned out that guy that took the business from me completely blew up and lost everything. Lost absolutely everything. And to the point that judges, apparently I never heard it firsthand, but there are things even being said in open court. And so I came in and I said, you know what? There's nobody up here in this city. It's only 70,000 people. Nobody's doing what I'm doing, what I want to do. There's some lawyers, but I know how to work in with the lawyers. And then, yeah, we just came in and we took over. We absolutely took over the city. And now we're actually going to be franchising. And in a city of 70,000 people, we're probably like, I shouldn't even say the number, but it's a crazy big number what we're going to do. And now we're expanding into a city that has like 15 times the population, and we're going to do it again. And then we're going to do it again and again. And I've already got people working with me to get the franchise model put out, because I'm going to help former cops do what I do and teach them how they can make 3 to 4 times what their salary was as a cop and have a better life, be able to be around their kids, set their own schedule. Courts aren't open on weekends, right? And we are just going to blow it up. And my goal just of that one part is to help over 1,000 former officers get the life that they deserve to live, because I know mentally where they were at where they are at because I was there.
Amazing. What a story. I mean, what kept you going? Was it just the fact that you have to keep going? You've got kids, or did you know that you would find that recipe or that the business that would ultimately get you to where you need to be?
The first was literally survival,
Survival,
right?
for sure.
Like
Mm,
embarrassment, having to sleep on my younger brother-in-law's basement, having to
mm,
sleep in
mm,
my father-in-law's basement.
mm,
You know, like it just there was an embarrassment factor that drove me. It broke my heart one day when we had to start putting groceries back because we couldn't afford them. We got to the till and we had to literally tell the kids we don't have enough money for that. We can't do that. We can't do that. And to literally see them sitting there crying, but we're like, it's not a necessity. We're sorry. We can't do that. And that broke my heart, you
mm.
know? And so I had that drive and even more so now because to add to everything that's happened, I got late stage 3 colon cancer several years ago. Okay. It was a misdiagnosis. And so it was well advanced. There were nodes into the lymph nodes. I was lucky; they all came back benign. Okay, if they would have been malignant, I would have been screwed. Anyways, so my youngest daughter at this time, she was old enough to go to court. She was 20. She started going to traffic court for me while I was going through chemo and radiation in another city. So she was like, sorry, um, my family shouldered the burden to make sure that we were still taken care of. And I just looked at that and I went, holy crap. Um, if I die today, my wife and kids have nothing. We have nothing to show for anything. I have an amazing wife. But she's been a stay-at-home mom. Okay. I've got 2 absolutely incredible daughters. Okay. But it's not their responsibility to take care of them or of my wife. It's my responsibility. So I'm very fortunate. They got rid of all the cancer. I'm over 2 years cancer free. Okay. It was unbelievable. Even the surgeon was like, I can't believe we got this. Like he was a stud, absolute stud surgeon. Why he was in the city of 70,000 people, I have no idea because he was a god. And, I'm cancer free. And I just said, you know what? This is not enough. If this happens to me again, I've got to have my wife and kids in a position that they're now taken care of
Yeah.
so that they know that if I die, that I know that they're not screwed anymore and they're not sleeping on anybody's basement floor.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing. How does mentoring fit into this? And I know that you're the founder of My Mentoring Guru. So perhaps you could tell me about the importance of mentoring and how this fits into your story.
When we came out of COVID, I expected my business really to take off. Okay, when we came back out. And it didn't. It stayed stagnant. It was still fine, but I was expecting this explosive growth and it didn't happen. And so I was like, something's changed. I got to find out what. And without going into a long story, I ended up finding Grant Cardone down in Florida. Okay. And Grant had gone on Undercover Billionaire and his alter ego. I actually found out about his alter ego before I found out about Grant Cardone. Okay. And he had undercover, his name was Lewis Curtis, and he had built a 5.5, I believe 5.5 or 5.9, I apologize, $1 million business in 90 days, where he got dropped into a city he'd never been before. They shaved his head. He could use no contacts, no cell phone for himself. They gave him a crap cell phone, $100 and a beat up truck. not even a place to stay for the night, and just said, go. And he created a $5.5 million business in 90 days.
That's
And so
crazy.
I wanted to learn from Lewis Curtis because I'd heard this had happened. Just there was this guy that had done this. And so I was like, who the hell is Lewis Curtis? And then I was like, holy crow, it's this guy's alter ego. I'm like, well, who's Grant Cardone? I had no idea. Well, it turns out he's like this worldwide business mentoring guru himself, right? And I was like, holy crow, how do I not know who this guy is? So I dove into the deep end with their stuff, absolutely immersed myself. And my business just took off like a rocket. Okay. I didn't change any ad spend. I did nothing else other than him telling me what to do. And it just absolutely exploded. And as a side note, it's always funny because I'm still in all of Grant's free webinars all the time and everything. And you see these people going, oh, this is crap. This doesn't work. He's just a scam. And I'm literally sitting there going, you are so full of it, dude. Like, I know it worked because I did it. And then I got the opportunity to be able to become one of his coaches around the world. So I took on that opportunity, and I used to be a basketball player, and I always loved coaching. So when I was a police officer, I coached high school basketball and stuff like that, and I really loved it. I did a lot of one-on-one stuff with friends' kids that I knew and stuff like that, and I just loved it. So now I have the opportunity to come in and be a coach to people, and I get to be able to take what I know and I'd be able to take what Grant knows. And I was the litmus test for that, right? It wasn't just somebody told me Grant's stuff worked. I proved it works. And so I was like, I want to get out there and I want to help people. Okay, obviously, as you know, where my heart goes first, it goes to the first responders, right? But I want to get out there and I want to help people to be able to do what I've done. And I don't want them to have the 2-decade-long continual missteps, screwed overs to get to where I'm now at. I want to shrink that learning curve down as much as I can. You know, they say, well, you learn the most from your mistakes. Okay, well, let's minimize those. Okay, I already know what happens when you go down that path. Okay, it ends up as a bad result. So let's just not go there. Let's try this one instead because I know it works, right? And so I work with individuals and businesses now in terms of growing their business in magnitudes of what it was previously. And in all aspects. Like I had one guy, he messaged me. I'm sitting in the airport last week because there was a problem with my dad. He's getting old, and I had to fly out. And I have this guy telling me that he was going to buy this business and all this stuff and everything. And literally, I'm sitting there texting him, and he took exactly what I taught him. He went in, he stole the bid from Superior Bids by focusing on how he was going to service the clients that he was taking over, where everybody else was focused on, I'll do it for this price, I'll do it for this price, I'll do it for this price. It was the only one that focused on service. And he messaged me 2 nights ago, and he's like, thank you so much. He goes, they chose us. He goes, and we got better terms than we thought were even possible on it. And they did it with 0 down. So it was just, they were just ecstatic. So that's the stuff that I live for, right? To be able to do that for others. You know, I'm expanding my traffic ticket business. I don't go to court anymore. Like maybe it's like once every couple months that I've got to fill in someone, right? But I've brought in others. I've got one of the guys that I've brought in. He is making double what he ever made back when he was a cop with me. Okay. Better life. And he is just like, this is phenomenal. He's like, thank you. And I want to do that for 1,000 more.
Amazing. What a journey you've been on. What are the three things you focus on when you start working with someone?
Well, the first thing always, there's two that kind of go in conjunction with each other, but the first one is always figuring out who you are. Okay. Because we get so wrapped up in a little box that society and our employment and our friends and family have placed us in, that we just identify as this little box. Okay. And I start telling people, list out, and this is one of Grant's techniques, by the way. List everything that you are. So I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a father, I'm a husband. And you go all the way down, what, you know, I'm a former traffic cop. I'm, a former police college instructor. I'm a former sales and marketer for the biggest company of its kind in Canada for this stock market stuff. I have all these things, and I teach people, you figure it out too. I remember the other day I was like, oh, right, I'm a published writer. I had an article published in Traders Mag Europe. You start realizing that you have all of these things, as opposed to just, for example, I'm a cop. Okay. And that's all I am. Well, that once we start looking at this broader person of who we really truly are, we realize that that little box that we've placed ourselves in is just really limiting us from what we are really truly capable of. And so that's the first step, is just identifying who you are and where your skills lie. So the second, if you'd like me to go on, Brett.
Please do. Yeah, this is great.
The second is we've got to get our mind right about our money. And there's different parts of that. But the first is, for example, are you 5 years into your career, or are you about to retire, but now you need another income? Okay. Those are two distinct different people. Okay. The retirement guy's got a pension he can live off. The 5-year guy probably doesn't. He probably doesn't have a nest egg. He's got a young kid. He's likely married. There's different aspects of life. So we've got to identify where you are, what your funds are that you have access to, so that we can then start to figure out the plan. Okay. And that moves into the next part, is we need a roadmap. Okay. And, we can quote Grant, but really, to me, this is, I learned this from Stephen R. Covey, who I met, by the way. But this is, begin with the end in mind. Okay. And then Grant takes that and says, okay, you want to make $200,000 this year? Fine. Let's make $200,000. As a matter of fact, Grant will say, no, 10x that, let's make 2 million. Okay. That's actually what Grant will say. Okay. But we're going to figure out how we're going to make that $200,000. Okay, well, what service or job are you going to do? Okay, well, I'm going to, like I say to people, do you have a lawnmower? Yeah, okay, well, now you're in landscaping, right? Do you own a shovel? Okay, where we live, the snow piles, right? Do you own a shovel? Yeah, okay, well, you're now in snow removal, right? And they're like, well, that's not how business works. And I'm like, that's exactly how business works. I'm like, do you really think a guy grew up going, I want to mow lawns for my life? You know what I mean? Like, but no, they figured out, here's a service I can provide, that I can do, that I can make money with, right? So now we sit there and we go, okay, you want $200,000. Okay. How many lawns do you have to mow to make $200,000?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, it's 2,000 lawns, for example. Okay. So now, how many lawns do you have to mow a month? How many lawns do you have to mow per day? Okay. And so we reverse engineer the math all the way down. So we've got it in little bits and pieces, so that people can see the path and actually see that it's doable. And it's funny when we do this with people, and I have people going like, well, I just want to make $35,000 a year. And I'm like, screw that. We're going to make 350, right? And then we reverse engineer the math, and they look at it and they go, I can do that tomorrow. I can do exactly what you're telling me I can do. I can go and do that. Where 350,000 or 200,000 is this massive sum in their head. Making $200 tomorrow is not a massive sum in their head, right? Or $500 or whatever it's going to be. And then we build out from there. And we start going, okay, well, what additional services can you add? Okay, right? Well, you could only mow lawns for 6 months out of the year. Well, maybe we're going to add in snow removal, right? Maybe you're a seamstress. Okay, well, when's the big time of year? Well, grads, right? Graduations are a big time of year. Okay, well, what else can we add in terms of the graduation? Well, and so we'd start looking at all these different things that we can add into to create additional streams of revenue over top of the main business that they're now getting involved with. Okay. Like I'm already talking with the guy about, that I told you they just bought the business, and we're talking about next steps. Right. And I'm like, so now you're going to take that contract with all those people and you are going to blow it up with additional services that you're going to provide. So not only are you going to pay them back with their own money, but you're then going to generate a positive revenue stream from the additional services that you're going to provide. And, the biggest thing, though, is people have got to take action. And I know you know that, Brad, because that's the biggest problem whenever you're working with a person or an organization is going from theoretical to actual. It's taking that step, and it looks great on paper, but then all of a sudden you get to the next morning and you're like, maybe I don't hate my job that much anymore, right? So you've got to get outside that circle and stay outside that circle and realize that there's so many of us out here, right, that we are more than welcoming to have you come and join us. Right. And you're not alone. And that's why I mentor people, is to help them do that. So in honor of my friend Michelle, and she doesn't even know this, but I just decided this today. I want to help 11,111 people be able to retire as comfortably as millionaires. That's my goal before I'm done.
What a great goal. And something resonated. You said, it's kind of find a tool that you've got and a need out there in the world. It wasn't, follow your passion. It's a practical approach to actually getting to where you need to be, because many people will say, I'm following my passion and just try and try and try. But if there's no demand out there in the world, you're never going to turn that into a viable business, right?
No, absolutely not. I can give you one great example. I know somebody who wanted to try a business of hand repainting worn out Smurfs. Okay. And she's like, the little blue guys, right? With the white hats. There's Papa Smurf with the red one. And,
yeah.
And she was like, I'm going to do that. There's a market for this. And I was like, okay, well, how much do you charge? Well, I charge like $50. So I'm like, okay, well, how long does it actually take you to hand paint one of these things to get it to where you're satisfied? Well, it takes me probably 20 hours. And I was like, so your business goal is to make $2.50 an hour.
Yeah.
And and she just looked at it and she was like, well, that's never going to work, is it? And I'm like, no. As passionate as you are about wanting to paint Smurfs, that could be a hobby. That's not a business.
Yes.
That's a hobby. That's what that is. And sometimes when you follow your passion, you're running a hobby. Okay, you're not running something that's going to be able to take care of your wife and kids, or your spouse, or whoever, or your grandparents. If you suddenly get cancer and die.
How important is finding a community that will support you? It sounds like the 10X community was a valuable part of your journey. Do you think people should seek out those types of ecosystems where you can bounce ideas, and or in your experience, is mentoring really the solution? Find a mentor who's been there, who can give you the direction, or maybe a bit of both.
Well, first of all, you need a mentor. Okay.
Yeah.
Someone who's willing to invest time into you, and you've got to be willing to pay for that time. Okay.
Mm,
People look at it and they go, well, what's a business coach really going to do for me? Well, if you find a reputable one who has done it and who is doing it, okay, then they're worth their weight in gold. Okay. When I come into a business, if I don't make them 10 times more than what they're paying me, I feel like that's a loss for me. I haven't had it happen yet, luckily, but that's my goal. So you may look at it and say, well, gosh, this guy's going to be $5,000 a month to bring it in, which I'm not, but to bring this person in. But if you understand that person's goal is to make you making $50,000 a month in income in replacement of that, and he or she has shown that they can do that, bring them in. If you've got the funds to do it, bring it in. So first of all, find a mentor that's done it. Don't go talk to Tom down the street who runs an appliance repair shop who makes $10,000 a year. Okay. Find someone that's doing what you want to do and become. Okay. Like I look at what you're doing, Brad, and I go, one day I want to be there. Like I look up to what you are doing for people and for organization. And I go, man, I would love to get to be able to be close with you, to be able to to work together with you, collaborate with you, to grow something. And I already know that we're going to do that. We've talked about that behind doors, and I've already sold that to my team that's involved in that. So you're in, by the way. You don't even know that yet. But
excellent.
But then you want to find a community too, okay, of like-minded individuals. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't go into these chat rooms where it's just a bitch session. Okay. It serves no purpose. Find the positive people who are going to take you to where you need to become. Okay. And sometimes that involves making hard decisions with family, with friends, of just going, I love you, but I don't have time for this right now. I've got too many goals. I've got too many dreams, hopefully too many passions that I want to fulfill to really have you sit there and tell me all the reasons why I can't do it, believing that you're looking out for my best interest. Okay. Those are the worst people to have around you. Well, let me just tell you why you're going to fail, because I'm your friend and I care for you. Come back over here where I'm lazy, because you'll be more comfortable over here. Because really what they're saying is you're making me uncomfortable and I don't want to expand like you do. So I've got to bring you back to me. And as you well know, Brad, and because I know you go in and you do this stuff, you've got to cut ties with some of these people. You just absolutely have to. And that's unfortunate. But if you want to get to where you've got to get, you don't have to be ruthless, but find the people out there. My gosh, I have got the most incredible accountability group. Okay. And I have people all over the world that I speak with on a daily basis who help guide me, and we guide each other. There are tons of successful, happy people out there that are more than happy to have you come in and be a part of what they're doing. Okay. Collaboration now is king in this industry. In any business nowadays, and you can collaborate around the world. I have a business with somebody who's in Australia, somebody who's in England, and somebody who's in the States, and I'm in Canada. And we formed a corporation together that we're now going out and servicing people with. Okay? all incredibly positive, wonderful people. You don't have to be around negativity, but find a mentor and then find a group.
I love it. I totally agree. Along my journey, there have been many people who have laughed when I said things like, I'm going to write a book. And I was so enthusiastic and earnest, and they just laughed, straight out laughed at me. Or, I'm thinking about doing some podcasting, and it's just a snigger. And that kind of thing. And you're right. You have to just accept that not everyone's going to support you. And in fact, some people, it may come from a place of envy, or it may come from a place of they've just got a fixed mindset. But either way, they're not going to help you on your journey. And there are so many positive people out there who will be collaborators and, allies and mentors along your journey. And sometimes you'll be the mentor, and sometimes you need to be mentored. And yeah, I love what you do, and really appreciate the story that you've shared. I know that it will be impactful. And what I really love about your work is, while you were operating from survival mode for some time, is you were always of service, helping others along the way. And the more you've grown, the more that's your goal. And I think that's really unique. And much appreciation. Yeah, I think it's a wonderful journey.
Well, and you're welcome, Brad. And you've got to come from a service perspective first. Like, you will be the most successful if you are servicing others first. It will come back to you. It does.
It does. How can people connect with you? Where would you like them to go if they'd like to find out more or discover your businesses?
They can literally find me on LinkedIn, Brian Livingston. Find me on Facebook. I am mediocre at best with social media, but you can find me there. They can go to mymentoring.com. There's a page that they can just fill out, tell me that they want to have a chat. I offer literally a free business assessment and then a free phone call review. I don't put a time limit on it because, phone call, what I mean by that is a Zoom call now. Okay.
Yes.
And we're going to sit down and we're going to examine stuff, and it's free. Okay. And you know what? If you decide that you want my help, then yeah, we're gonna figure it out. But I can also tell you, if I'm not the person for you, I'm gonna get you in with the person that I think is gonna help you the best. Okay, because that's what a mentor does, is they help service you the best way that you can be serviced. And the biggest part of that is saying, I am not the one for you, this person is.
Hey, thank you so much. And for everyone out there, I will be appearing on Brian's podcast. So we'll have a conversation the other way around at some point, which I'm very much looking forward to. Brian, thank you so much. Any final thoughts for those who stuck with us all the way to the end?
Well, honestly, people are not going to find a better person than you to want to follow and try and model, mimic, and master. Okay, because you are absolutely incredible. So I would say you've already got somebody right in front of you who you should be reaching out to get guidance from and do what he's done because he's so successful.
Thank you. That's the first time someone's ever said something like that. I appreciate it very much. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode. We'll see you next time.